Welcome back to Coding Goblin. Creating a stats component in Vue JS using Tailwind CSS. Really easy to do. We've got our Vue project. The first thing we need to do is create a new component. We're going to call it Stats.vue. And now we're just going to import that into our parent component, which is the app.vue file from components stats.vue, and then we can just import that here. We're going to get an error message because we haven't got a script tag or a template tag, so we're going to pop those in. Template, restart the server, and that error is going to go away. So we're going to make this stats component reusable so that we can pass the data for our stats from our parent component to the child component, which is the stats component, and then we can reuse it anywhere in our project and pass the data that we want to it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to define some props on the stats component. So each stat is going to have, and this will vary depending on your needs, but for us, it's going to have a title, it's going to have the actual stat, so the number, and then a description. So title, stat, and then a little bit more information, description. We're going to pass that in the form of an array. So we're only going to actually need one prop. So we're going to say const props equals define props. And we're going to say stats. And that's an array. So we'll just output that and then pass an array and just make sure that's working. So if we come to our stats here and we go stats equals stats, and then if we define our stats array up here. So each stat is going to be an object and it's going to have the title 1, stat, no, we won't call it stat, we'll just call it stat number. And to be honest with you, we'll just make that a string as well, it doesn't need to be an actual number. And description. And we'll just duplicate that. So we'll have 3 stats, just to demonstrate this. Right, so save that and we see we get our array of stats here. So that's good. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a grid and we're going to loop within that grid, and then we're going to output each stat, and then we're going to style the grid and each stat using Tailwind. So first thing we're going to do is create our grid container. So we're going to say class equals grid. And on small screens, we're going to just have them stacked on top of each other. So we're going to say grid cols 1, and then small, we're going to say grid cols 3. Save that. And now we're going to just do a for loop, a v-for loop within our grid. So we're going to say template v4 equals stat in stats, and then we're just going to output each stat. So now if we save that, we get our rows like that, and if we make the screen smaller, we should get them stacked on top of each other. So we're slowly getting somewhere. First thing I want to do is give each, I I've said first thing about 8 times now. The next thing we want to do is just give a background color to each stat so we can see what we're dealing with. Background gray 100. And I want to just give a little gap between each stat as well. Stat gap 4. 2, 1. Yeah, like that. And I want to give each stat a little bit of padding. Padding 2. Why did I do that? P2. We are getting somewhere. So I want to display the title, the stat, and the description. So that's actually really simple. They're just going to be on top of each other. So within here, we're going to just create another div, and we're going to say flex. I'm going to say flex col. So that sets the direction so that instead of being next to each other in line, they'll be on top of each other. And then we want to have we'll have a H3 for the title. So we say stat.title. We want to have span for the stat number. Is that what I called it? I can't actually remember. Stat number, I did call it that. And then we want to just have a P for the description. And I've put stats when that needs to be stat. So let's save that. So that's outputting nicely. That looks a bit rubbish. If you can see that, these are not aligned there. So what I'm going to do is create another div up here. And this is going to be a flex and flex col. And then what I'm going to do is pop this one inside it. And I'm going to create another div inside as well. And what we want is the bottom, the descriptions to all be aligned. So let's just take those two in there. And now what we need to say is height full. And then we want to say justify between. So it still looks rubbish, but we're getting there. So we're now just going to start styling each part. So this comes down to personal preference. I'm not amazing at designing, so I'm just going to do what I think looks half decent. So I don't want the title to be huge. The main bit is the stat, so that's what we want to have emphasis on. So that's going to be larger, bolder, but we'll make the title bolder than the description. So we're going to say font bold. We'll keep the size of that text how it is. Then we'll come to our stats here and we'll say class equals. So let's just have a look at how it looks. Text LG. Maybe make that a bit bigger. To XL. Let's see, 3. Oh. Yeah, I mean that looks okay, doesn't it? Let's make it very bold. I think you say font black. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then the description. maybe we make this small. So if we say text small, yeah, okay, not looking terrible. So let's maybe change some colors, maybe. So let's do subtle changes. So the title, text, gray 800. You can't see any difference there. Subtle. Okay, text gray 500. Not sure if that looks good. Text gray 900. And now I think let's give a little bit of border radius to each of these. So let's come here and say rounded. Oh no, not there. Let's come here and say rounded. And I think that looks quite good, to be honest with you. You could obviously customize these to be however you want. More information, less information. But the beauty of this is it's now reusable. So your parent component, you just have to change whatever information you want. And that'll be passed to it. And you can use that in any component. So that's really handy. If you cannot be bothered to design something like this for yourself, or you aren't able to design something that looks good, I recommend using a Tailwind component library. I have personally been using Tailkit recently, and it's really good. Loads of components, loads of stats components, for example. So if you want to check that out, I'll pop a link in the description below. Thanks for watching. The end.